right. So thank you very much. Thank you to Inglase for this opportunity to be here with you and share my experience. I think that it's really important for us to create this community of practice and be able to share all the information, because it can be very valuable and help a lot. So here today, I'm going to bring slightly different perspective to what you've seen until now. So trying to see it more from the angle of the private investor, because I'm an environmental green finance manager. So that's basically my work, trying to bring in more private investment to support natural restoration works in Scotland. So I don't focus specifically on urban areas, but I think that in most cases, financing natural capital will evolve around the same principles. And so I will try to first give my perception of the current general context we are in, and then provide a couple of examples of real life example. And I mean, one that will be specifically in a city setting. So we all agree that we need more money to restore nature and what we call our natural capital, natural assets. So a first source of funding is the philanthropic money. So charities, donations, we've seen that just before, a few examples. But then you also have the public funding, and Javi gave us a bunch of examples of different sources of this public funding. So through grants or budget allocations to local public entities. And that's how most of the work is currently supported. That's how most of the natural capital restoration works happen. But it's not enough to reach our objectives. So there is a need for something else. And I believe that private finance can be one of the solutions, because if we think about it, there is so much money that's circulating within the financial system. If we can harness just a few % of that amount, that would be enough to really double or triple the amount of efforts we're currently doing. So in the end, it's all about providing a service through natural assets and selling it to interested buyers. And that's creating a business model. That's how you really harness the private industry, the private sector's potential. So once the business model is established, and we'll see a few examples later on, we can look toward private investors saying, okay, here is an opportunity for you to invest in, and come in. And now we have new technologies that are appearing all the time, and that creates a fertile ground for new business models to appear, or to develop new business models or improve existing ones. But as you know, private investors are very skittish, or we'll say very risk adverse. So for now, they will probably only lend their financial support if someone else is taking most part of the risk. That's the honest truth. So that's where public money has still a role to play, despite the hundreds of thousands of billions potentially available by way of private investment each year in the world. So that's what we try to call blended finance, where public money possibly comes in first, or at least take the riskiest, in charge the riskiest phase of the project, and enables the private investors to move in more securely and have a multiplying effect on the initial public money injection. So if we go back to the business model aspect, there is one more thing that I think is important to highlight, in addition to what we've been talking in this webinar. It's about the two different approaches to monetizing ecosystem services and the benefits provided by natural asset. Because that's really how you bring in the private sector, is that you manage to create a revenue from the services that provide the natural asset. So the first approach is the one on the top. It's what we call stacking. And that's where you try to sell separately each service provided by the asset on different markets. So that would be kind of the ideal situation if you are able to identify all the services and sell them separately. But the truth, it's very complex. You need codes and frameworks and standards for every service, and it costs every time money to sell on a specific market. And you have to accurately measure each one of them, and there are issues around additionality. So nowadays, it's not the way things are going. So it's more with the second approach, the one at the bottom, and it's what we call bundling. So we try to put all these services together and sell them as a package or a story to corporates who will be acting more in a partnership way. Javi gave an examples of corporates that are willing to commit to the cause and go beyond just the carbon, for example, or and are looking to the socioeconomic benefits of a project and the well-being of people in the area. So that's when you find someone like this, you can create a kind of partnership and sell them one service with the addition of everything else coming with it. So that's the bundling approach. So if I take an example of a urban tree, the obvious value you can take, monetary value you can have from it is selling the carbon credits from it. But what if you could also sell the drainage capacity of the tree, or the mitigation of the island effect, the cleaning of the air, and so on to different stakeholders? You could multiply the revenue streams and really give the asset its true value, because to the truth is that these assets are that much valuable to us. And that's only a fair way to recognize that. But that's enough of theory. Now let's look at a real life example. So the first one is the Wye River project. So it's it goes beyond just the urban area. It's at the catchment level, but it has an impact on every city that goes that is along the river. So it has been developed over the last 2-3 years in England by DEFRA, the Environment Agency, Esme Fernbairn Foundation, and Triodos Bank in support of the Wye River Trust. So the Wye River catchment has been subject to increasing flooding and is constituted by multiple landowners. So initially, DEFRA and Esme Fernbairn provided a first grant of £135,000. And after connecting with the local river trust and different stakeholders in the catchment, it was quickly determined that the most valuable ecosystem service for the stakeholders was natural flood management. So it was more valuable than carbon, for example. So to avoid unnecessary complication, the payment for ecosystem services scheme was designed around the natural flood management services, even though other benefits were also targeted. So carbon, we saw there will be, they are currently planting 40 hectares of trees, for example. Biodiversity, so we will see that they are going through the biodiversity net gain scheme that we have in England, for example, but not to sell it. We will see how they value it differently. And of course, local socioeconomic benefits, so job creation, well-being, flood risk management for the community, and so on. But it's important to note that these other benefits have not been directly remunerated with any revenue stream. Only the natural flood management services would be paid for by businesses and companies located downstream. So with the initial grant funding, research has been conducted on the hydrological aspect to develop the metrics for the natural flood management efficiency. That's not quite easy. You had to have everyone agree on the same metrics and objectives and key indicators. And more importantly, maybe local resources were directly hired in the catchment to engage efficiently with them, as well as the local community. As we've seen, engaging the local community is essential for all these projects to be successful. So central to this project was the creation of a community of interest company, what we call a KIC, limited by guarantee, meaning that there is no shareholders, but with a board that include one representative for each group of stakeholders involved, whether the public sector or the private companies or the environmental agency, and so on. It is the KIC that will sign contracts with buyers of the ecosystem services, and that we also serve to receive funding from the private investors. Because now that we have created this business model, we can have the private investors coming in. So they came in by the way of a loan, a little less than 1 million loan for over 9 years. They were social investment funds for around £600,000 and high net worth individuals for £250,000. And there were also some tax incentives in all of this. The most interesting part is that Triodos managed to value the biodiversity gain, not directly through the biodiversity net gain scheme in England, but by tweaking the interest rate of the loan. So if the targeted biodiversity objectives were achieved, the interest rate would be reduced from 6% per year to 5% per year. So it was quite a good incentive to justify the biodiversity improvements also in the project. So in this project, they found 5 buyers. So that includes utility companies, so the one managing the water, agencies, local council, insurance companies, and so on. And these were together paying £250,000 per year, or will be paying £250,000 per year. So that's quite a lot of money. But considering the future costs that they will be avoiding as a company due to the damage of the ongoing flooding every year, they thought it would be interesting. And that's because we have the private investment, the loan in the picture. But once the loan is repaid, this amount will be greatly reduced, as we will see. So from all this money, £32,000 go to the landowners who have agreed to let their land be restored in that way and not use them for their agricultural practices anymore. And that's it. So the contract will initially run from year 0 to year 6, and then buyers of the natural flood management will have the ability to retract from the contract if specific natural flood management indicators are not reached. So if they're not happy with the results, they can opt out. But the private investors will have to stay in until year 9. So they are taking on the risk from there on. So just showing that they are sometimes willing to take some risks. If they keep going after year 9, then the investors are fully repaid and leave the project, and there is the possibility to switch to a perpetuity model with lower cost, as I said, because the debt is repaid. So the buyers will only be paying £50,000 per year on perpetuity. So it's about £10,000 per company for the flood reduction for the next 20, 30, 50 years, which when you add up is not that expensive. So in addition, there are public grants. As we saw, there are some for tree planting and for hedgerow planting. And it's interesting to see here that the carbon credits generated will belong to the landowners. So they will not belong to the KIC or be sold within this project. Each landowner will be able to use them or sell them, but in exchange for the tree planting, they will have to repay some part of what they would earn by selling the credits as a facilitation fee to the project, so they can use it to further push the restoration works. So, okay, so there you have it, multiple layers of funding, private and public, creating this blended finance solution. So I'm sorry, it's ugly, but it's not that complicated in the end. And the most complicated part is convincing the landowners actually to commit their lands to the project. So to be able to do this, the projects had to offer them 4 or 5 times what they currently earn in terms of revenues from these lands, and compensate them if they miss out on any future agricultural subsidies, for example. That was also very important. So the project is currently launched, and regarding replicability, the main barrier was the negotiation with all the different stakeholders. And for it to be replicated somewhere, some of the stakeholders admitted in the project that they would prefer it was much larger scale next time to justify the investment in time and resources. So I think that's one of the main barriers that we are now facing, that once these pilot projects are working, is how to scale up, because we need solutions to coordinate on a larger scale or to aggregate the project together to facilitate private investment and involvement of the institutional investors, which represent the main bulk of the private investment world. So, a second example, now looking at the scale of a city, although the project is now evolving and looking to more of a regional approach. And I think that's a trend that we're going to see, is that projects need to have some scale to be really effective. So it's also one of these projects making use of new technologies. So we will be talking about smart contracts and real-time data, but no blockchain, not on this one, but I've seen other projects that are trying to make use of that to facilitate investment in nature. So I'm involved in a project known as Trees as Infrastructure, so Trees AI, initiated by Dark Matter Labs in collaboration with the City of Glasgow. So cities have the particularity that land is expensive, as you know, but the multiple benefits provided by natural assets have a more immediate and multiplied effect due to the high density of the population. So from an investment point of view, it's a higher risk-reward context that can potentially justify higher investment or funding. So the idea behind Trees AI is to shift the perception of trees in the city from a liability, because you have to pay maintenance costs and it's a limiting factor in future development, to an asset. So to make it become an infrastructure that we want to establish as a critical part of urban infrastructure, alongside bridges, roads, or rails, to enable investment, profitability, and sustainability. So, for example, the forecasted value of the carbon stored in Glasgow's urban forest is estimated to be 183,000 tons by 2050, representing a potential total value of 120 million pounds. Of course, that's depending on the price of the carbon, but we're not going to discuss that today. The project aims to address some of the following issues: that the city has a target to plant to reach a total of 18 million trees planted, provide high quality data, allow for easier and more impactful strategic planning, and ensure that the true potential of urban trees is recognized. So carbon sequestration, storm water retention, flood control, water quality improvement, air quality improvement, biodiversity, heat island effect reduction, and so on. It's ambitious, but that's the objective. So I'm not the most expert on the details of the project, but the idea is to create an interactive map, almost updated in real time, that will provide a precise indication of all the benefits that the urban trees will be providing, where exactly, how much, but all that imprinted on the map. So it can be very useful for example, stormwater retention or the drainage in the city, flood control, but also for biodiversity or well-being, or even economic benefits of the trees. So it could become an essential tool for urban planning and delivery. And in addition, the possibility to finance the trees planting and the maintenance through private fund should be really appealing. And that's what we're going to look at now. So regarding the financing part of the project, the Trees AI platform will act as an intermediary, simplifying the process through smart contracts and ensuring integrity through third-party verification. Investors could be anyone from private individuals to housing associations, insurance utility companies, health institutions, or even local businesses who directly benefit from having more trees around. So for example, some studies have found that greener environment can lead to more sales for retailers, more attendance for restaurants, hotels, and pubs. So they would be willing to invest in order to have more trees around their workplace. So the trees AI acts as an aggregator in investment platform, but also becomes a tool for planning and decision making on a local and city level. Investors will also benefit from the gathered data in terms of climate-related and non-financial disclosures. As we know, information and data has become the main incentive for some investors, second only to the risk-return ratio. They are investing in greener projects, and they sometimes have to offset the rest of their portfolio that are invested in less environmental friendly assets by investing in these kind of projects, so that they will be requiring data in return to prove that and to demonstrate the positive effect and measure it. So this tool will provide them with exactly that. So Trees AI sits conveniently in the middle, providing both sides with an appropriate service. Investors will invest to receive a financial return for a sustainable source and the related data. And this investment allows to fund project developers upfront with selected projects. And these projects will provide outcome buyers, so the corporates who wants to offset, for example, buying the carbon credits, or the water utility companies who want to better manage the flooding in the city or the drainage system. They will be able to buy these outcomes from this marketplace or the project developers through the platform. So I think it's a great project that has the ability to scale up and go beyond selling just the carbon units, as we said, by adding different layers, different mapping benefits to the mapping according to latest research and publication. But more importantly, it's removing the need for public funding, maybe not at the initial stage, and then certainly, and at the same time helping to promote the inclusion of more trees in the urban setting. And we're talking about trees, but we can imagine this apply to any other nature-based solution that would involve the natural environment in the cities.